Welcome to the Arena Decklist Podcast. I'm Jerry Thompson, joined by Brian Gottlieb, and we are two angry boys.
Very angry. Super angry.
And we wanted to scale this back.
I know. We will. When people stop pissing us off, then we'll scale it back. It's very simple.
Well, you know that's unlikely to happen, yeah?
It does seem that way. As more and more time goes on, it seems less likely that I stop being pissed off. But look, the main reason I do this podcast is so I can hang out with my friend every week. We can talk about the game we love. We have a built-in excuse to always make sure we're staying in contact with each other, chatting, which I love because I'm shitty at that. Like, I'm just not good with any of my friends. I'm glad we have that built in to our process. So if something's on my mind and I'm cranky about it, then I just kind of want to do it. Like, even if it's annoying, even if like that makes the show not for some people, I'm okay with that. Like, it's fine. It's fine if you don't want to hear it. I understand. I really do. And I don't begrudge anyone who's just like, enough. But I was angry today and I said, we should start the show with some anger. And you happily agreed with me. So
if you don't want to listen to some very valid anger and some less valid anger, I guess, like things that are not as important, maybe just skip ahead to like the 45-minute mark. I'm pretty sure we'll be done ranting by then.
Yeah, that seems safe. I hope. I mean, I don't have 40 hours to record this podcast. And we do have a main topic. We're going to talk about Pioneer. So if you're a Pioneer person, you want to stick around for that.
Oh yeah, fair.
But we got to get the anger out first.
I guess we do have to talk about Pioneer at some point. Anyway, Carmen Handy over on the Twitters. We are recording this on a Wednesday. She posted a thing. I guess I should, I don't know, probably read exactly what it is, right?
I like that. Yeah, I like just saying the words as written. That seems correct.
All right. Carmen, her tweet is having a hard time today. Hashtag WotC staff. The twit longer basically is, when I was hired by Wizards of the Coast, I was a member of the Rivals League. Shortly before my hiring, Eric Froelich left the Rivals League as a result of his partner getting hired by WotC. Part of his contract was paid out. When I was hired, I specifically asked if I could be similarly compensated and was told that the details of the situation made it so that wouldn't be possible. I accepted this and didn't argue. 2-ish weeks ago, I found out that when Chris Kavartek was hired by Wizards of the Coast, he asked that they pay out part of his Rivals contract, and they did. I told my manager that I was upset by this. My manager told me that he would do some digging for more information. Today, I had a meeting with my manager and an HR representative and was told that they cannot confirm or deny the details of other people's pay/compensation packages and will not be making any sort of equity adjustments. End tweet.
Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Just flat out unacceptable. I mean,
on so many levels.
As the situation is presented, this cannot happen. It's not fair. It doesn't shock me. I mean, like, I know at some point I will share stories of my own experiences dealing with Wizards in terms of hiring and potential employment and the problems there. And I have a feeling you have similar stories to share, but this isn't the moment for that. There's a very pointed situation here, a very clear situation, which it just can't be allowed to stand. If this doesn't upset you, then I worry about you as a person. It's not correct that two people of equal job title and, equal placement in their leagues, really mirrored situations, get such separate treatment. It's not fair. And
to be clear, you're talking about Carmen and Chris, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a difference between Ephra's situation. And
yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, it's still not fair. Even if it was just Ephra's situation versus Carmen's situation, I would still have issue with it. But the Chris and Carmen thing looks like apples to apples as far as the information is presented to us. And I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you don't recognize just how offensive this is, but how stupid is it? Like, how stupid is it to manage your business this way and leave yourself this well-deserved backlash just sitting out there that could have been dealt with over a few $1,000s. You made $1 billion last year. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And how do you explain it? Like, how do you even think things get to this point where someone who, by all accounts, I mean, we don't have most information, but I would expect Carmen has had a very positive effect with her time at Wizards. Just knowing her, knowing how she thinks about Magic. I told her from the beginning, she seems like a slam dunk Wizards employee that could do many things, not just, make the donuts, but could go on to do literally whatever she wanted within the company.
Yeah, absolutely true.
And to be treated in this fashion, I mean, over just I don't want to say a meaningless amount of money. I mean, it is meaningful money, but in terms of like your $1 billion budget, it's pretty meaningless. Like, it really doesn't affect them at all. And I don't understand how you get to this point.
I mean, you do.
Short of actual malice, and that is, I have always hesitated to actually ascribe that to Wizards, because in my experience with them, I don't often find malice. I find incompetence sometimes. I find like antiquated structures. I find just poor business practices.
I mean, greed is a big part of that. And it's not, it's not like personal greed necessarily, because like who is directly making money.
Right.
But
right.
It is definitely like parent company inspired greed, shareholder inspired greed, whatever. And I guess like a lot of that usually does come with some malice attached.
It's just not even net dollar positive. Like,
But,
if
yeah,
you have a risk of this ever coming to fruition, it's a horrible, horrible EV play. Not to talk about things that are very personal, very real in terms of EV. I hate that type of discussion. And this has problems beyond that. But even if you wanted to just look at it in terms of dollars and cents, it's messed up.
Yeah, I mean, it's malice and or discrimination.
Yeah.
And I think discrimination certainly is underlined. And then I don't know if you like ascribe malice to that or not, or if it's just, built in your nature or something. But it's like, it is.
Systemic, absolute unacceptable behavior. And it's wild. It's absolutely wild that we're dealing with this in 2022. I shouldn't be shocked. I mean, I see it, I see what my wife faces all the time. I see what so many of my non-male, my non-white friends face on a regular basis. So it's still disheartening to see it, though.
Absolutely hilarious coming off the back of the Pride Secret Lair announcement.
Yeah.
And generally being, widely beloved, and holy shit. Yeah. Like, corporations are not your friend. They do not care. They are clearly doing the Pride thing for like
dollars.
Yeah. Dollars, branding, whatever sort of like positive social media spin that they get. And when you're not looking, they do shit like this.
Yeah. And so I don't know how I could have like done this podcast ignoring this fact. I just would have like seethed and been dismissive of everything we talked about and been like, none of this matters. So maybe I can like actually do a better job assessing our main topic on its merits, having vented about this. But I'm pissed. I can't think of a better ambassador for the game than Carmen, and to have her treated this way, it's just infuriating.
Yeah. It's just so funny to me, because it's like, I don't know how much money it is. Maybe it's like, oh, we pay out some of your contract. Maybe that's $5,000 or $10,000. Like, I don't know, but it's just like drop in the bucket for them. Right. And just so shitty, but not surprising.
Going to tell you something. This may not surprise you, Gerald. Wizards' pay is not in line with the rest of the industry.
Oh, I know.
And,
I know.
I had a feeling you would not be surprised. And to double down on that in this scenario where you can just do the right thing.
It's not even like fleecing one of your employees, though, because they just like rolled over for Chris, is what it seems like. And we're just like, oh, yeah, you want, X amount of money? Yeah, we'll give it to you. No problem.
Yeah. So the one thing that's not to invalidate any of this, but just like I don't have words from Chris right now. And Chris is someone I've grown to respect a lot. And Carmen indicated Chris was just like extremely forthright and, sharing the information. I don't know exactly what the contract situation was there, how fiercely negotiations had to go down, or what. I would like to know more. But the thing you can't escape is that all of these people, and it's not only people like Chris and Carmen who are directly putting themselves kind of in the line of fire, but anyone who speaks out on behalf of Carmen, who's at Wizards right now, is just like doing a very brave thing. They're putting a crosshair on themselves and probably hampering future job prospects.
Oh, yeah.
And look, they're going to have to do quite a bit as an organization to make it look like they're still considering anyone who is in these scenarios as a full-fledged member capable of all the advancement of everyone else. But that doesn't, just because you make it look that way doesn't always make it true. And when the time comes and you're up for that promotion, that can kind of like define your career, and you don't get it, you've always got to ask yourself, well, was it because of this or was it because of something else? And that's a really precarious position to put yourself in, especially in an industry as uncertain as this one. There's just a lot of underpayment. There's a lot of not knowing where your next job is coming from. So it's an incredibly brave thing for all these people to do.
Game design too is like so ethereal because you can't ever tell if you did like a good job or a great job or whatever. It's just like you just kind of have to roll with it. And it's like, maybe you thought you did a great job and then the public didn't really like the thing that you put out, or maybe you thought you did a bad job, but your contemporaries think you did a great job or whatever. It's just really hard to get a handle on how well you're actually doing. And I mean, there's already just like a lot of imposter syndrome and stuff like that in general, right?
Yeah.
So given that it's so nebulous, that can only serve to make things worse. And then like you mentioned, you're up for a potential promotion, you get turned down, and it's just like, well, is it, because I raised a stink about this money thing? Is it because I'm actually not good enough? Is it because I am good enough, but they don't know or whatever? It's so much stuff. You're absolutely right.
And discrimination is insidious everywhere, but it's particularly insidious in those type of scenarios where there are no hard metrics. So you can't say, right, look, I made this many dollars this year, whereas X person made this many dollars and you gave them more money. You're never going to have anything like that to point to. And all that you can really use in support of your case is other soft metrics. You can look at performance reviews, things like that, but those always can have that baked in discrimination in them. So it's such a volatile situation where if you're not trying to actively weed it out, you are encouraging it to exist within your organization.
Correct.
And that's the problem here. And it's very clear it has gone unchecked.
So Carmen makes this post, right? And I feel like her doing that is also just exceptional, incredible bravery, right? Because it certainly affects her probably much stronger than it does in like any individual who speaks out on her behalf. Not to discount like the amount
correct.
of impact that has, but yeah, it's just like it's a weird situation, and I am not like privy to that insider information anymore, so I don't know like what is going to happen or whatever. But just like you think about the possible outcomes, right? And you mentioned like maybe not getting promoted, kind of being like on like a soft blacklist or whatever. That could certainly happen. Maybe they're like, oh, okay, well, because you got 1,000 retweets, we will pay you out. But it's like, they're probably not going to overpay, right? They're just going to give you the amount that you deserved in the first place. And then it's just like, well, does this actually solve anything? It's like, yeah, they kind of like made that right, but they don't do anything to fix the underlying problem that caused this.
What happens the next time this comes up?
Yeah.
And how many other, marginalized people who are in the organization right now had similar, gaps in their payment structure as compared to other folks in their same exact spot?
Right.
I don't know. I just don't know.
Yep. So I'm going to be interested to see how it all shakes out, but I am also fully aware that we just may never know.
And I'm cool with that. I think
fine.
Carmen has already shared more with us than she was obligated to. I just appreciate what she did here. I think she is looking out. This isn't about just looking out for her. That's the thing to really understand here. That's not the goal. It's about looking out for everyone in the organization at risk to herself. That's the way this should be perceived.
Yep. And it's, not just like the people who come after her, right? But it's just like the people who are there currently too.
Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah, I hope she definitely gets paid. Not that this is necessarily about the money, but I definitely hope that happens because someone should have to pay. And I hope that they do some shit to fix this, but I'm not getting my hopes up about that, unfortunately.
I'm with you. Systemic problems.
Yeah. What was the second thing? SCG.
Yeah, I'm angry at them too. Add them to the list.
Yep. Yeah. This is descending order, just so y'all are aware. The Carmen thing is easy number one.
Yep.
SCG was 2 days ago, They kind of just like stealthily removed the vax or negative test entry mandate thing from their events websites, like, for example, SCGCon Syracuse, right? People notice that, like, oh, hey, this actually doesn't say that it requires proof of vaccination or a negative test. What's the deal? And then it was just kind of like crickets. They were like, oh, they noticed, gotta get some time to formulate a reply. Eventually came back with a reply, and it was like, yes, that information is missing from the website or whatever. It's just like, God damn it. I don't know, man. COVID's not over. PAX East happened. They had, as far as I can tell, like, I wasn't there. I don't know anyone personally who was there, but it seems like they had a pretty strict, like, mask enforcement policy, and you needed, like, proof of vaccination or a negative test to get in. And one of the enforcers at PAX got COVID and died. Like, this is real shit. This is still happening.
Yeah, and I don't really even know what to say about this. I think it was like an opportunity to make a buck again. Like, you just save a few dollars by not having to. I mean, here's the thing about this situation: they put the system in place already. It was there. It was working. They did it at multiple SCG cons, and now they're like, we don't want to pay for this anymore. What other justification could there be? COVID is not over. Nobody believes that. Nobody logical believes that.
I mean, there were plenty of people who I don't know if they do believe it or whatever, but they were certainly parroting that on various Twitter threads. So I don't know, man. I don't know what people believe.
You're right. You're right. People shouldn't believe that, I guess is what I should say. Some people do. They're wrong. But I just don't know here. It seems like once you have this in place, you have this set up, you're kind of priced in to either continuing to do it or giving a valid reason for not doing it any longer. Like, you caved because you recognized it was the right thing, or you thought it was going to cost you money. So, now you believe it's not going to cost you money anymore? Is that all we're doing here?
So, I mean, I'll pay for the doorman.
Sure.
Personally, for events that I'm not even at. I don't care. Whatever.
It's such, again, we're talking about drops in the bucket here to just keep people safe and to do the right thing. And I don't know, man, I'm extremely frustrated by the state of greed presently.
So logically, I want to agree with you where it's like, I don't know, look at like the case numbers and whatnot, but it's just like everywhere is basically lifting restrictions. And I understand that if you are the one that is, I don't know, like holding out kind of has like a negative connotation to it or whatever, but it's like you're the person who is still enforcing the stuff. Like, people are going to look at you weird or whatever. But I also think that there's like a big portion of the Magic community who is like, oh, you're the one doing it correctly.
Right. There's something to be said for being the leader on an issue. And that's the thing about SCG, is that they're clearly the leader of doing this type of stuff, running conventions, running card game events. They just are like the name in doing it. They compete with one other organization on the same scale. And I would say SCG just did it bigger for years and years. And it's in a weird state of flux, but I still think they have the edge in terms of like running events. And if you're the leader, act like it. Like, there's such an opportunity for you to just go ahead, and you already did the work. You did it. You caved once. You realized it was the right thing to do, or felt like it was the thing that was going to make you money. So just keep doing it. Keep the systems in place. And I guess they don't agree. And
I don't know. You say like, look, act like a leader or whatever, but just look at our leaders, dude. They don't.
That's true.
They don't. So again, logically, I agree with you, but it's just like that sort of argument I don't think is going to hold any water for them.
I know. And you know what the real problem is that I actually can't come up with arguments anymore that do hold water. I think that's the problem, is that there's something to be said for the fact where every other thing in the world has moved on. Incorrectly so. I'm not trying to defend any of these decisions or the state we're in. It's just like, if everyone throws up their hands and says, fuck it, I'm done with it, we can't do anything anymore, then it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. They're right. You can't do anything in those scenarios where everyone has decided not to do anything. There's no effective means of control anymore. But like, does that make it correct? Does that make it right? Absolutely not. Like, there's still space to be better. I don't know. I expect a lot from SCG. I do. I expect them to be leaders. We talked about when we parted ways with SCG, we felt like we were almost always treated fairly. My time with SCG was almost universally good. So I have high expectations for them. And I think they've often done the right thing for their employees, for their customers. And that's what makes this hit a little harder, is because I know they have the capacity to do the right thing within their organizational structure. And they have leaders who have taken those steps before and have done the right thing. So to see this just get kind of flubbed, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it's kind of going downhill, and I don't know why, because it mostly seems like it's the same people in charge. So
it does. And you have to wonder if it's just like, I don't know if desperation is the right word, but like things have been tough. Things have been tough for everyone, right? And SCG lost a lot of what it did for a very long time. I don't think they suffered through the pandemic. I think their model changed. I think they sold a lot of cards because cards just sold really well in general. But, all that ancillary stuff they were doing, the content, the tournament stuff, it just went away. And how they've kind of come back from that has just been very odd, very sort of dismissive at times.
yeah, and I don't know what's going on. Again, don't have the insider track here, so can only speculate. But I know that like card sales were up and like Magic did great during the pandemic, but I don't know if it was LGSs that had like a very wide, expansive player base where people could just like come in, grab a box real quick, and get out. Because SCG being located in Roanoke, where it's like they have a pretty reasonable player base for what is mostly just a small town, right? But it's definitely not like this thriving local community that we had, say, in Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. You would expect that people are making purchases online, but it's just like I can basically argue one way or the other, where it's like, oh, did like SCG specifically do well during the pandemic because they weren't able to go to shows all over the US and buy up cards, and they were frequently out of cards, and it's hard to sell cards when you don't have them.
Good points.
Right? So if they were hit hard, I could understand that. If they did make a bunch of money, I could understand that too. I actually don't know. And it's entirely possible too that Magic doing really well was just like people buy boxes on Amazon for $5 less or whatever.
Walmart, buying cards in Walmart. Yeah, absolutely.
I have no idea. So I think that if it was like, oh yeah, like SCG got hit really hard in the last 2 years, you could kind of explain away some of the decisions where it's like, oh, they're doing this because they are desperate for money or whatever. But it's like, I don't know if that's the case. So
no, I don't either. And again, we won't know. We're never going to have clarity on this. I don't know. I don't even know what the purpose of this is. I just like have this anger inside me that I wanted to vent this week, and we did it. And I don't feel any better. Do you feel better?
A little bit.
Okay, that's good.
I don't know. I honestly think that Occam's razor in this situation is probably just everywhere else is kind of like lifting mandates, so they are too. And it might not even have anything to do with, oh, we have to pay someone to watch the door or whatever. Or like we think that anti-vaxxers are a large portion of our customer base or something. I don't know. I have no idea. But in regards to like COVID specific things, I guess I would like to say a few things, if that is cool.
Yeah. Your show, brother. Do what you want to do.
I don't know, man. It's your show too.
Well, I like hearing this. So you have my permission.
So for the folks who are like, well, cases still exist, people are still dying, but it's like not as bad as X, Y, and Z part on the timeline. It's still bad, right? And just because maybe it is less bad now doesn't mean that you suddenly drop all precautions to zero, right? One of the things that I saw getting thrown around a lot, which actually kind of makes sense, is like, oh, the amount of total car accidents went down. I'm just going to ride without a seatbelt. That just doesn't make any sense.
No.
So it's the same kind of deal. It's just like, I don't know, all the folks that are just like, I don't like wearing a mask or whatever. I don't even necessarily wear a mask to protect myself. It is for harm reduction. And so that if I am possibly infected and do not know it, it reduces the likelihood of me spreading it to other people, which is what masks are better at versus protecting yourself, right? So
yeah, I mean, that's most of their purpose.
Yeah. So I don't get it. It's just like the people who are like, oh, like just do your own risk, like personal risk calculation. It's like I was never doing that calculation. My calculation was always on harm reduction. That's it. That is what I care about more so than my own personal risk. Is like I do not want to contribute to the spread of a disease that could potentially kill someone. Why would I want to do that? I can wear a mask, dude. It's not that hard.
It isn't. Getting vaccinated isn't hard. None of this stuff is hard. And I think confirming that you have done these things should be the bare minimum for participation in, frankly, high risk events. And they continue to be high risk. And, maybe they shouldn't happen. I am, at this stage, I am basically sympathetic to the argument that we can't win here. Like our government has betrayed us. Our economy has betrayed us. We've been betrayed in every possible way. There is no victory. So it is just like we all are going to live with risk forever. But like even making that decision, you can still do what you can do. It's just not a huge ask. And yeah, I'm right there with you in most ways. I think probably we differ a little bit in terms of like what we have deemed acceptable behavior. And I don't think, though, the fact that I have a little bit broader range than you do means I disagree with any of your points. I think they're all spot on. It's just kind of a defeatism and there's no winning left. So what am I doing here type deal. But still, none of that is to imply that like I'm ever taking my mask off in this situation because it makes me uncomfortable. That's stupid. Like it's such a low cost thing for me to do. I'll do it for as long as it helps. And a bunch of other behaviors I'll continue to do as long as it helps. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of appetite for that at this point.
The problem I have with all of this is the people who are like, well, you get to choose your own risk factor or whatever. If you are scared, you can stay home or whatever. It's just like, dude, shut the hell up. Why don't you care about other humans? Like that's what I want to know. Is just like the thought just like doesn't enter into anyone's head. It's always like me. How does COVID affect me? How does wearing a mask affect me or whatever? And it's just like, maybe it's not about you. Maybe you should give a shit about the people around you. And that just seems very difficult for a lot of people to understand.
As always. I mean, that's society 101. It is challenging for other people to see that.
Yeah. And that's the most frustrating thing about all of it, because it's like you see these arguments happening and it's just like, this is not even what you're talking about. It's just like one person is saying like, I care about my community. Other person is just like, I don't. And it's just like, okay, that is your entire argument right there. Like you two can stop talking now. Right.
Yeah. There's not going to be any commonality between those two positions.
Yeah. But it's like, oh, let me link you to these studies about the efficacy of masks or like where the cases are or whatever. It's, no, shut the hell up. Like just care about other people. How about that? And if you don't want to do that, we can just not talk to each other. That's it. That's my rant.
Good rant. Agreed. Do we have our anger out now? Have we done it?
No.
How long did it take to get anger out?
So going on the rant is kind of cathartic. It is soothing to some degree, but now I'm also like worked up, right?
A little fired up. Yeah, I feel that.
It's like, give me another thing to rant about. Okay, so last thing, which is honestly whatever.
This is almost irrelevant, but yes, we can rant about this quickly.
So Explorer started on Magic Arena, and it is basically, it's going to be Pioneer eventually, but it's like Pioneer without a lot of the Pioneer cards. But it means that there's like no fake stuff and no alchemy cards, no cards that have been altered or anything. And they banned Winota in Explorer. Meanwhile, Winota is still legal in Pioneer.
Winota has like dirt on someone at WotC because this card just shouldn't exist. It's stupid. It's clearly identifiable as stupid. We have gotten rid of it in multiple formats. When it has been around, it has not been fun. It's bad. It's a bad card. It's a poorly designed card. It shouldn't exist. It keeps being here. I get it in theory. In practice, it doesn't lead to fun games. It doesn't combine interesting or novel ways. It doesn't even put good restrictions on deck building. Like it's just very clear what you're going to do here. So I'm all for banning it in Explorer, but why are you letting it stay legal in Pioneer? And why are you talking about like oh, as we add more cards, we'll bring it back. No, nobody wants this. Nobody wants this card. Like nobody wants to play with it in any format. Let it go, get it done with. That's it. This is very low on the anger scale, but it's a silly card.
Yeah, it's just funny to me that obviously the formats are different, but it's like they're meant to be the same thing, and I can totally see, because it's like comparing standard to 4-year extended or something, where it's just like obviously one format is going to be more powerful than the other, and maybe it's just Explorer cannot handle the stress of Winota, and I understand banning it, but it's just like, no, don't be talking about how you're going to put it back, like it's busted in Pioneer. It is probably like the card that I would ban in Pioneer, and it's not even like power level or win rate necessarily. Like
it's just stupid.
It is those things, but it's also really silly and puts a constraint on the format, to be like a turn 3 format. And it's just like, what the hell? We didn't even want to do this with Modern,
Yeah, huge letdown that the card continues to exist in Pioneer, but I have a feeling this is going to get sorted out at some point. It's just annoying. We can't just do it now.
I miss the days where they're just banning stuff every week. And then it was like, oh, we'll get Pioneer to a good place. Don't worry. And then they're just like, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, we're done. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I crafted some Winotas.
Did you? Do you get a refund on those?
You do. I mean, I skimmed. I'm pretty sure I saw it, but my confidence level is not 100%. So.
It should be, because I read it, and I'm gonna break your heart right now. If you have ever gotten refunds for Winota before, you will not get this refund. And I have a feeling you have gotten previous Winota refunds.
I had 2.
Okay.
Does it count any, or does it count all? Or is it just like if you got one wild card from Winota? Maybe I'm a big dummy.
You're asking questions I can't answer. And not only can I not answer them, but also there's apparently a bug where you won't be told how many wild cards you're getting from the banning of Winota. So you will not know.
I mean, I could like look at my wild card count now, right?
Take notes, write it down, and then yes, you can maybe figure it out.
I briefly, I was skimming, right? And I saw a thing that was like, oh, you'll get some cards or whatever. And I was like, I'll check. And I had the Tybalt's Trickeries, so I didn't even think about crafting those. And I was like, I had 2 Winotas, whatever. I'll just craft the other 2. But I was never like, oh, slam dunk. So I don't know. I was already in Arena. It wasn't that hard. Maybe they got me.
I think you're going to be okay, but I would like a report on this. I want to know what happens here.
I'll let you know if I know.
Okay, fair enough.
But in the meantime, I guess let this be a cautionary tale. Well, I guess by the time this happens, by the time the show gets out, yeah, it doesn't matter. So
not helping anyone as usual. Not helping anyone here.
Yeah, maybe just read the fine print.
There was no fine print ahead of time. This is all post.
It was normal size print. I couldn't even read that. That's fine.
Yeah,
it's okay. Do you want to talk about literal Pioneer? I guess 35 minutes into this podcast.
I will now talk about actual Pioneer. Yes, because I cannot, in good faith, discuss actual Pioneer until I have aired all of my grievances surrounding Pioneer and the existence of Magic cards in general. Once that is complete, however, I am happy to talk about the Pioneer format, which seems incredibly diverse, although people are not loving it right now. Do you have a sense of why that is exactly?
So I definitely did not like it 2 to 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that was it just seemed like all of the decks existed on the furthest reaches of the polls as humanly possible. It was just like, Winota is this turn 3 aggro combo deck, and playing other aggro decks is just silly. There was blue-white control, which is fine to exist, obviously, but it was definitely just, no win condition, going super hard, counterspells removal, nothing else. Again, fine. That is the least big offender. There was Lotus Field combo existing, also fine. But when it has to do with an indestructible land, it's not very easy to interact with.
No.
So that's pretty frustrating. And just so many matches against that deck are like, well, if I'm playing Winota, am I on the play? Do I get to do my thing on turn 3, turn 4, and actually goldfish them? Or if you're a normal deck and you're on the draw, you probably just automatically lose and then hope that sideboard cards carry you. And
right.
That's just not a great feeling in general, but also it's just like, I don't know, what are you going to have, like 2 damping spheres? Get out of here, right? It's like you could load up on it, but it's like there are decks all over that exist on the hard reaches of these polls, and you also need to sideboard against them, right?
Yeah.
So, and then there was Phoenix, which is kind of a control deck, but also I do stuff with my graveyard, and then eventually I, double or triple fork a time walk, and you just can't do anything and you lose. Just like all these decks kind of suck. Just the play patterns with them. There's not a whole lot of interaction. It's like maybe you're shocking some tutus or whatever, but man, I miss like mono black aggro.
Mono black, mono red. Yeah. Those were the days for sure.
Or when what is currently the Winota decks now were just like 8 elves and 8 rabble masters, right? It's just like inherently fair beatdown that's like, oh wow, yeah, you could get a fast draw or whatever, but if you had like an Anger of the Gods, you're probably okay.
Yeah, they also had Once Upon a Time, so they were really good at just like doing that thing over and over when they first showed up.
So I
would still take that though. I would take that over Winota though.
Yeah, A, that's fine, and B, that wasn't always the case. It was like Once Upon a Time got banned, and it was still a deck. So
that's true. That's
whatever.
True. It did persist after that.
So, given that, things did not look good. However, there was a Pioneer Challenge and a Showcase Challenge last weekend on Magic Online. Like basically the only place to play Pioneer. So I don't know. Probably looking to doing that. MH2 drafts just came back today on Wednesday. So a lot of the modern cards are also dropping. If you're like, Madge, I want Solitudes, but they're $70. And it's like, well, not anymore. And, maybe give it a few days and they'll be even less. So decent time to get into Magic Online if you like some slow spreadsheet-like Magic action. And we have loaner accounts from Card Hoarder. So if you don't want to just, spend $1,000 on a deck, you can also just use a rental service for like $35 a month and just play kind of whatever you want. So Moto's not that bad.
It's not. It's I think still my favorite way to play Magic at the moment, short of, in a room with other vaccinated COVID negative people playing like Team Sealed. That might be the only thing better right now.
Dude, even then that was sketch.
It was probably a little sketch, but we survived, and
because we left early.
We did leave early. Very, very wise choice. But now we're on Moto and we're participating in these challenges. Unfortunately, never winning them. But this challenge was won by a deck that I think we both have spent some time around, generally appreciate, but never really love. The first challenge won by Niv Mizzet Reborn again. And I think it's been a minute since this deck has really been in the top tier of the Pioneer format. But
yeah,
I get it.
Claudio is... I don't know if they've been playing Magic Online for a long time. And because I don't recognize the screen name from like 5 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
they're in every challenge top 8, it feels like.
Yeah, certainly within like the last 2 years. It started in Modern with Yawgmoth, and I think I played Claudio twice in one of the challenges I played in. And they were just like basically the sole person repping that deck until it eventually got like a little bit more popular. And also, I know that Niv Mizzet has been a thing that they've done in the past. So
yep.
No surprise to see them in top 8. No surprise to see them playing Niv. No surprise to see them winning. They also top 8'd the other challenge on Sunday.
Yep. Yeah. Double top-notch performance. And this deck not really changing much other than just smoothing out the mana a little bit. I say smoothing out. I don't actually know if that's the case. I mean, this mana base is wild.
I have no idea if this is right. So, okay, 28 land.
Yeah.
61 cards. I kind of love that. Because you have
you get it in the tutoring deck, right?
Yeah, so you have some weirdo bring to light targets that you probably just don't want to draw. Yeah. And a lot of your cards are fairly replaceable, and you need to hit every land drop, and you don't have fetches or anything, So the mana base is completely wild. I have no idea if it is even close to correct. It's a lot of 1 and 2 ofs, just like one of every triome, It's a work of art, really.
Or a disaster. I have no idea which. I mean, it could be absolutely incredible. It wouldn't surprise me. 28
land, it's hard to go wrong. It's like, oh man, I drew my 5 land opener and I'm mana screwed. Like, come on.
Yeah, I like the commitment. I like the commitment to a large mana base. I think it makes sense in the scenario. Also, there's just a ton of cycling in your mana base. You shouldn't want to do that, but it's there.
It's clunky, and your top end has a lot of like 5 mana cards.
Yes, it does.
So it's really difficult to actually get to cycle a triome and still be able
But you also play to the point where you have 8 lands in play too. Like that's not unreasonable with this deck.
Super late game, probably great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is solid. It is pretty hard to kill. It has answers to a lot of stuff. I feel like there are almost certainly some matchups that are probably not very good,
Yep.
but you gain a lot of ground by having a bring to light answer package for a lot of things. And then the sideboard is just the cheapest, best possible hate cards available, just like Dovin's Veto, Thoughtseize, Mystical Dispute, Go Blank, Weathered Runestone. Surek Dragonclaw is not cheap, but is clearly there for a specific matchup, probably blue white.
Yeah, just to jam through your nibs, make sure you're able to resolve. I would assume just against the hard control Azorius decks is
Right.
its main point, and it seems great in that role. So more power to Sirach. I was excited to see that card here.
I was on the dev team for that set, man. I was telling you before the show, I put Sirach in a lot of FFL decks. It was not bad.
I buy it. I mean, it's a good stat line. 6/6, flash, can't be countered. Other spells can't be countered. Other creatures have trample. Like that's a lot of value from this 5-drop.
I think in real life, it was less good at eating siege rhinos than it was in FFL, you know?
Okay. So it had a purpose, didn't quite get to live up to that purpose.
No, I think it was mostly the other attacks. Like, obviously, yeah, it being a 6/6, it was supposed to kind of like outscale green decks or whatever. Trample was there to beat token stuff, which didn't really materialize. And Siege Rhino is probably uncounterable, or is not uncounterable, because this card is. So, like, this card and Pearl Lake Ancient were uncounterable, and there was like too many things that were uncounterable, basically, in the set.
Now, would it have? You think it would have stayed a 4/5 in that scenario, or does it shrink if it's uncounterable?
So it was 4/5 uncounterable ETB drain 3, and then it was like, oh well,
No life gain.
No, it was drain 3.
Oh, okay, so it did have life gain attached.
Yeah, it was just not trample, and then it was like, oh okay, well I don't know if there's another uncounterable card in the set too on top of this, or if it was like, well, this is the third one. This is kind of heavy-handed, so it should not have this, and then it got trample again because of the token stuff.
26 cards in the latest set with treasure on them. Just so you know, I mean, we want to talk heavy-handed.
Yeah, I think that's different. I guess even for an evergreen mechanic, that's outrageous.
Yep.
But whatever.
But I'm glad you were not heavy-handed in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't necessarily all me. I do think that maybe I was the person who brought this up, where it's just like, goddamn, everything is uncountable. Why is this? You know,
Right?
It's just like just remove counterspells if that's what you're gonna do. You know.
And the counterspells in that format were pretty good. So it's a weird. I mean, I get like you load up on counter magic that's decent. And you say, okay, we need to have counterplay to this,
right?
But if you're going to build in that kind of counterplay, just don't do it.
I really didn't like Disdainful Stroke, and now it's just in every standard set tormenting me.
It is always present. Well, there's also Salumgars scoring in that set, right?
That was in DTK.
Oh, okay.
That was much later, but yeah. Anyway, second place in this Pioneer Challenge, Optimus 344 with Winota, 23 lands, 29 creatures, 4 fables, 4 chariots. Biggest thing you can find is Tovolar's Huntmaster, although just getting another Winota is fine too.
Yep.
Giving her haste basically, and then like a random Kenrith, and
yeah, it's all fine. I don't think you need absurd hits when like if you just get one, you kind of win the game a lot of the time. And I hate this deck. I really just don't want it to be a thing any longer. I hate the litmus test it provides for the format. I hate how uninteresting the games often feel, both with and against it, quite frankly. But like half the time I feel like, well, am I supposed to just be playing Winota? And I wonder if like it isn't represented as much as it should be, just because it is sort of meh. Like it just does its thing. So yeah, ban Winota. Done with it.
Cool. Third place, Coldfire 153, Esper, Greasefang, Parhelion 2. So deposit Parhelion into your graveyard, Greasefang on 3, return Parhelion, crew it with Okiba. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those combo decks where you do your thing and sometimes you lose, but it's pretty rare, and this deck can do it pretty early. So if you do get to turn 3 this, it is Winota-ish feeling. And then with recent prints, this deck actually looks really good because you get to play Thoughtseize, you have Consider, you have Ledger Shredder as another discard outlet, which is cool. Tainted Indulgence, Faithful Mending, You still get to play Dig Through Time inexplicably. I don't know why. And then just like opt Spell Pierce. So now you're just this like cantrip based combo deck, which is just really rad.
If you told me like a month from now this is the best deck in Pioneer, I would not be shocked. Given these ads, I
Right.
kind of thought it was a joke before, honestly,
Yeah.
and I thought people were trying a little too hard with this. But just Ledger Shredder, Tainted Indulgence, I sort of believe now. It's got a lot more glue, a lot more consistent, a lot more powerful, and like you said, it gets to play multiple game plans very consistently. If you have the right interaction suite for a given tournament with this deck, I think you're in a really, really strong spot. And, maybe like some of the stuff here doesn't exactly line up with Winota. That's one knock I would have against it. Like, I wish this deck was built a little bit more in consideration of that deck existing. But that's what sideboards are for. There's plenty of moves you can make. So
Yep.
I believe in this deck now. I am a 100% adept of the Grease Fang, and you will see me resolving Parhelions at some point in the future.
The one thing I do not like about this deck, kind of similarly to the Reanimator deck in Modern, when we went over like one of the deck dumps or something, was just like that deck had to find, in a lot of the versions without Unmarked Grave, you had to find Archon of Cruelty and then put it in your graveyard, and then also have the Reanimate thing. This has the same problem where it's like you need exactly like Greasefang and Parhelion, and they have like a Miser Sky Sovereign, which is fine, but certainly not great. And if you are able to put that together, then it's awesome, but you're definitely going to play games where you go through like 30 cards and you're still missing a piece, So there is some amount of fail rate there.
Yeah, you've just gotten so much better at putting it together. Like, even in comparison to Modern, you have Dig Through Time. That's like a huge, huge difference maker in terms of doing things reliably. And you fuel it so well with this deck, right? Like with Faithful Mending, with Tainted Indulgence, you have so many cards that put multiples in the bin. You're reliably getting these Dig Through Times off. I agree. You could certainly still get caught with these cards in the bottom half of your deck, but you should still do enough in the early game and then get to this quote unquote late game, turn 4, turn 5 reliably, and having the backup plan of just like, oh, I did my thing on turn 3. That's a fine spot to be in when you're playing this type of combo control-ish deck.
Yeah, I mean, you have Shredder, which is a fine plan B, but is mostly there as a blocker. You have Push and Thoughtseize and Spell Pierce as ways to keep you alive. So you don't necessarily need to turn 3 the combo every game, right?
Yep.
Like you can very easily play until like turn 6 and then do it then and still be fine. So
I wouldn't sleep on Faithful Mending either. I mean, adding the life gain to that card and just reliably doing this stuff and flashing it back, like games where you gain 6 or 8 from Faithful Mending, that's a lot to ask your opponent to play through. So especially if they're trying to do like more fair things, which do still exist in Pioneer. So
no, that's true too. Does keep you alive. I just kind of look at it as break even because you have 4 Thoughtseize and 9 Shocklands, so you're probably taking a decent amount of damage.
Yeah,
that's all right. Deck looks really good. I really like this just absolutely streamlined list.
Same.
4th place, Snapcaster Bolt playing Green White Angels with that screen name. Really?
Yeah, I was lied to. By the name.
Giada, Font of Hope, new 2-drop from Streets. Pretty solid. I don't think it's not like, oh, this card is super busted, but it is a very, very good 2-drop, which the deck was severely lacking.
Yeah, I mean, it does everything you wanted, right? Like, it snowballs games really hard. It accelerates you so you can be a multi-spell deck. Previously, the only way you got to play like multiple spells in a turn was via Collected Company.
Right.
And that meant I was just spending 4 mana and doing nothing. So now I have the option to actually like spend 4 mana and maybe put 2 creatures into play, which is way more appealing to me than just casting Collected Company and ending my turn. So,
also funny that there is a Book of Exalted Deeds and 2 copies of Mutavault.
It's cool. I mean, it sort of fits, right? It's not hard to get a little bit of side benefit from this card, I think, given you have like your Righteous Valkyries and things like that. So sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, you could also just get your Valkyrie out of range against mono red, for example, if you're able to go that long. And
yeah, I'm Bishop of Wings is here too, so there's plenty of ways to do this stuff for sure.
So interesting deck. Sideboard definitely has, again, a lot of hate cards. 4 copies of Archon of Emeria,
as it should.
Yep. And this is just going to be consistent, I think, throughout the top 8 and the format probably.
I think so. Yeah, it's solid. Nothing that blows my mind, but it seems like a fine option.
Yep. Caillou, 5th place. 4 Arclay Phoenix, 4 Thing in the Ice, 1 Brazen Borrower, 2 pieces of the puzzle, 4 Treasure Cruise, no Galvanic Iteration. So this is more of a classic list.
Yeah, no Ledger Shredder either, which is a card that's starting to creep into these Phoenix decks.
Yep.
And I think we'll see that as we go throughout. So this feels sort of outdated to me. I don't think this is like the better way to do this deck at the moment. I do think there is new technology, and I think it has improved the deck. So fine list, but I think we're going to look at some Phoenix lists that I'm more into as we go through the rest of these decks.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to come across it, but it's also worth noting that a lot of the Phoenix decks kind of morphed into like this Narset Days Undoing or Collective Defiance kind of combo control deck that had like Niv Mizzet at the top end. And that was all just a reaction to where the format was at the time.
Yeah, and things are getting a little bit more streamlined now, which seems correct to me. Just like answer the things that matter. But as you see, we keep talking about different decks as we move through this, and it's not going to change as we move to our next tournament either. So a lot of diversity in the format right now.
Yep. 6th place, Andy Awkward. Another Izzet deck. This one with Ledger Shredder. Also, Monastery Swiss Spear, Soulscar Mage, Sprite Dragon. So you have kind of like the modern-ish prowess package, except you get to play Treasure Cruise, just like the good old days in Modern. And I'm pretty sure this is a Kane Reinhardt special.
Okay, I really like the Reckless Rages here, like alongside Ledger Shredder and these prowess creatures, which naturally grow out of space. Doing 4 damage for 1 mana is critical.
You have to kill Winota.
So important, and this is just like a really clean way of doing it. So I'm sort of into this. Like as far as these decks go, I really appreciate a deck that has access to Reckless Rage right now.
Yeah, Thing in the Ice, Arclay Phoenix, awesome cards, still a little bit mid-rangey. Not particularly great against like Grease Fang or Lotus Field.
Yep.
And they're maybe a little bit better against Winota, but I think getting the cheap creatures and getting to play with Reckless Rage is probably just good enough, if not like outright better. So I like this take.
Too. Yeah, I agree.
Sir Maxime, 7th place. Mono Red, absolutely love this deck. Okay. So 8 prowess creatures. Eidolon of the Great Rebel, Bone Crusher Giant, 4 Chandra Dressed to Kill. Thing I did not realize is that Chandra works so well with the like Skewer the Critics, Light Up the Stage, Spectacle cards.
Yeah.
Just absolutely obscene. Kumano faces Kakazan, also is like another 1-drop. Pretty solid card. Also enables the Spectacle cards on the cheap. You get Den of the Bugbear, Ramnap Ruins, and a Sekenzan. So you have infinite utility in your mana base. Like Play with Fire has upgraded your Wild Slashes a little bit. You can play as many shocks as you want now. Like this deck is just really good. Like I love the red decks like this, where you have like staying power, you have late game, all of your cards feel individually powerful. This deck is awesome.
I agree. I thought red was quite good in the format previously. It sort of got outscaled for a little while, but more reliability for these spectacle cards. Like they're really where the deck pushes its power into sort of more modern feeling, right? It gets that kind of damage output you're looking for. Worth noting too, next deck we're going to get to is the 8th place deck. It's Sandy Dog playing mono red, of course. Very similar take, basically cutting 2 Spikefield Hazard, 2 Lightning Strike to, looks like, add 2 more lands. So we have 13 mountains here. And also playing 2 Karizev. So just on the battlefield a little bit more. I think that's fine. I think both of these approaches are great. And as long as you are ready to account for Winota with these setups, and you see in the sideboard, there's red cap melees, there's lava coil. So there are options for answering this. Even like stuff like Rampaging Ferocidon, if you're able to get on board early enough, that can make a difference. And then Chain Whirler too, Goblin Chain Whirler to clean up all those elves that they're so reliant on. All this stuff seems like solid plans. I'm a little concerned about decks. Like there is some good life gain in the format right now. Things like the Angels deck, they're annoying. I'm sure you can play through them, beat them occasionally. I mean, but you don't want to run into that reliably. That's
no,
for sure.
I mean, both these decks have like Ferocidon and Vortex in the sideboard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the format at this point is very aware of mono red, and a lot of the decks have corrected. And I think the mono red decks have kind of like corrected against that and updated their sideboards and stuff. So playing mono red now is not as good as it was like 3 weeks ago, but I think it is still good. And just this is the greatest hits of mono red, basically.
Yeah.
This is like very reminiscent of like the Goblin Guide, Stagger Shock, Koth, Red Deck, and Standard, whereas like,
Yep.
man, all your cards are just bangers.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Also, I will note my wife's favorite Magic deck.
The Stagger Shock Koth deck?
No,
Or just
mono red Pioneer decks. Eidolon of the Great, Revel, Kari Zev, Monastery Swiftspear, Soulscar Mage. This is how she learned to play Magic.
Yeah. Eidolon is sort of a main deck hate card. It doesn't necessarily doesn't hit everything from the Lotus Field deck, but like early pressure plus it should be good enough because they still have to twiddle their land a bunch. But I like the fact that if you don't want to be a Winota gamer, or you think that Winota is getting hated out or whatever, and you want to be proactive because you don't know exactly what you're going to play against, I love that mono red is an option. And when I was initially looking at the format and was like, oh, it's just these like non-interactive decks, just kind of like all doing their thing, like ships passing in the night or whatever. Like this had not really popped up yet. And now that it exists, I think the format's getting like a little bit better. And then, there's stuff like Ledger Shredder helping out.
Yeah, there's multiple good spots, I think, in this top 8 where you can look and say, okay, these decks are like kind of doing some back and forth. Even if you want to look at like the Greasefane deck, we talk about how that's evolving into playing more towards the battlefield with Fatal Push, Spell Pierce, Thoughtseize. I mean, like, is it perfect? No. Is it better than it was? I think so.
Yeah, we're getting there. And then the second Pioneer Challenge, Fink 64 won with 4 Faceless Haven and 18 Snow-Covered Islands, just spirits with some Curious Obsessions, Geist Light Snares, and Lofty Denials.
What do you make of this deck being the winner here? I mean, like, obviously a pretty stacked tournament, and I don't like, obviously this stuff has floated around the format forever. I can't tell you how many times I've either tried mono blue in Pioneer or just seen mono blue with occasional top 8s, but it's not really like on anyone's list as a deck to watch. Here you see it though, picking up a first place in a big spot. Why was this the moment for this deck?
I mean, if people are figuring out how to play mid-range in a sea of widely polarized decks, this deck is perfect to capitalize on it. And I think that you're just like naturally set up pretty well to beat up on things like Lotus Field because you actually have main deck disruption. And I mean, Geist Light Snare and Lofty Denial is more main deck counter magic than you normally see in a lot of decks like this, right?
Right.
So that certainly helps. You have Curious Obsession, Mausoleum Wanderer can even get them. So I would say if it's things like Niv or Blue White or Lotus Field, this deck looks great.
I want to point out a Streets of New Capenna card in the sideboard. 4 copies
I like
of
this.
Witness Protection.
Dude,
like this,
you have,
this card's legit.
Dude, you have any idea how many times I played like Dragon Turtle or the one that was like 1 mana Dehydration, but you take 4 or whatever? This card is perfect for this strategy. Absolutely.
I agree. It does exactly what you're looking for. Cheap, efficient, answers basically every creature, and you're not going to care about that 1/1. Like, it's just not going to matter all that much. So I am for this card. You can get like resets off of it with Brazen Borrower should you play it early and like want to find a cash in on it. Oh no, Brazen Borrower is non.
Yeah, it's not your own stuff.
Controls. Yeah. So scratch that. But still, there's enough utility here where like having a clean answer to everything. Don't sleep on that for a deck that's as limited as mono blue. It used to be you put something on the battlefield, you're buried.
Yeah, and now they basically just deal with it cleanly for 1 mana, which is exactly what they want.
Huge upgrade.
Yep. So I don't know if this deck is good, but I love the look of it. I like how it's built a lot, and I'm not surprised to see a deck like it doing well.
Yeah.
Bullseye, second place, Winota.
Nothing to say. Still Winota.
They cut a Fable for a Selfless Spirit.
Okay.
All right. Third place, Cherry Man. Mono Green Devotion. So this is a deck that was kind of on the polls before, where it was like just this super hardcore ramp deck that you couldn't really interact with. And there's some ridiculous combo with like multiple Karns and Kioras that is infinite if you have, I don't know, 14 mana and a Nykthos or something. So it's like you're kind of building towards that, but like those cards are just good on their own. You have Storm the Festival to find all this stuff. So this is Mono Green Devotion with basically a deterministic endgame, which is kind of nice.
That's good. You don't need a like super strong, Karn, Mycosynth Lattice lockout, but you do need something. I think it's important to have something you can build towards where you just are like, I'm going to flood the battlefield, and then at some point I will do X. What is X? There has to be some X there. And it can be as clunky as you want as long as it functions, and it does here. So, I wish this deck had some more targets. Like it's just kind of linear and strong on its face, but not at all trying to like exploit anything or really like carve out a portion of the metagame. It's just good stuff that functions really well together. Sometimes that's enough though. So I don't think this is a bad choice at all.
No, it's okay. I think, maybe a little bit too slow, maybe a little bit weak to a lot of the same stuff that Winota is weak to, where if like your elves are getting picked off, it's pretty bad for
Yeah.
you, you know?
Yep.
So
That's fair.
I think that there are a lot of decks that I would choose over this, but I understand that this sort of strategy is a fan favorite.
Sure.
And it's solid. It's solidly like tier 1.5, tier 2, or whatever.
Yep.
Jesse Samick, 4th place. Phoenix, but with Shredder instead of Thing in the Ice. The Thing in the Ices now live in the sideboard. And this is 2 Trespass, 1 Treasure Cruise, 2 Galvanic Iteration, 4 pieces of the puzzle. So again, kind of like the new classic version, except updated with Ledger Shredder.
Yeah, a little bit of combo action. Really strong Ledger Shredders here with Consider, Opt. All this card draw we have floating all over the place. So I mostly believe this to be the new face of Phoenix for the time being. I like the idea of Thing in the Ice in the sideboard. It always has made more sense to me as a sideboard card.
It's so bad in half your matchups.
Yeah, and like I get it. It's hard for a 7/8 to be blank. So you can make something out of it, but you don't actively want it so many times. So seeing it finally get replaced by something that is a little bit more functional in multiple matchups. And these decks were prone to running out of gas in scenarios as well, which is weird to say about the deck that plays like Treasure Cruise and occasionally Dig Through Time, but it could happen.
Yeah.
And now they have very, very reliable refreshes. They have another threat in Ledger Shredders. So I still like this deck. I think it's extremely solid, probably like tier 1, tier 1.5 in my eyes.
It's definitely good. I am a little bit more partial to the Narset builds, depending on what the metagame looks like.
Okay.
But that's typically because I like Narset a lot in certain matchups that were popular before. Like obviously if that changes and it's like a bunch of mono red and spirits or whatever, it's like, no, okay, just give me like the time walks or whatever.
Yeah, I spent so much time like trying to work the Narset combo stuff into various decks. A lot of it in Pioneer, but probably even more in Modern, like Teferi's puzzle box stuff. And I kind of got my fill of it. It just never quite got there for me. But I think Narset as a card is very strong in the format. So.
Right. That's the whole idea. And I don't like Days Undoing. I think that's kind of nonsense. Once you shift over to having like 2 or 3 Collective Defiances in your deck, I like that a lot. Because that card actually has reasonable utility, whereas Days Undoing is just like absolutely dead unless you have Narset.
Yeah, that was always the problem. So you could sell me on like a halfway version of this approach.
Yeah. Bolivo, 5th place, legendary Magic Online Grinder, Azorius Control, 80 cards with the Urian, Planeswalkers and Sweepers and Counterspells and whatnot.
Yeah, what's there to say about this deck? I think it's solid, but you know what it does. It has good threats for every matchup. I like the focus on the Wandering Emperor. I think the card's obviously incredible everywhere. And yeah, back that up with a little Shark Typhoon. You have the right removal spells, the right disruption, Memory Deluge to play the long game. All the pieces are there for sure. This should be a player in in Pioneer for basically ever, I think.
Yeah, like you said, you have all the pieces. Before it was like, we're kind of missing like cheap interaction. Now you have Fateful Absence, March. You have a big catch-all sweeper in Farewell. You have a good defensive planeswalker with Emperor.
Yep.
You kind of have it all. You have everything that you could possibly want. So
I think so, yeah.
If this is not good, then Blue-White Control is not good.
Fair enough.
AFX, 6th place. Thing in the Ice, no Phoenix, 4 Narset. No Niv, but like a Hullbreaker Horror for the top end. 2 Collective Defiance, 1 Days Undoing. So a little bit of mix.
Yeah, like you said, I do like Collective Defiance a lot more. It has other utilities, so that makes sense. But Days Undoing continues to be a little clunky. Although you look at the spell quality here, it's really high. I still believe in Hullbreaker Horror as a Pioneer finisher. That makes sense to me. This deck is set up really well to leverage it. So yeah, solid if you like the Narset build. I think, like you said, metagame dependent call. You really need to know what you're trying to target with the Narset builds.
Yeah, if Narset is bad, your deck is probably bad.
Sounds right.
Claudio, again, in 7th place with Niv, unfortunately could not win both tournaments.
Yeah, only played 60 cards this time. I'm going to say that's why
Oh.
did not win this
Yeah,
instance
probably.
of the challenge.
Yeah, the 61st Magic card.
It's a magical thing.
And in 8th place, Max 09, 80 card Azorius. -1 absorb, +1 Shark Typhoon are the main deck spell difference from Bulbos.
Yeah, so we end on a duplicate there, but if you paid close attention during that top 8, 7 different archetypes, I believe. You know, it depends if you want to count like the blue-red decks as the same thing, but I wouldn't. I think the blue-red decks we see here are very different.
Yeah, they're different.
That speaks pretty well of this format. Like we mentioned, decks that are looking to interact on the stock. We saw no Lotus Field anywhere across these two challenges. So that's sort of at a trend down right now. That tends to be the best moment to play Lotus Field, when people are just like, oh, there's no Lotus Field.
True.
It can steal a tournament at that moment. But as it stands right now, I think Pioneer is in a solid place. And if you told me I had to play Pioneer RPTQ season, I would not be the least bit upset.
I would be, but that's okay.
Okay. What format would make you happy right now?
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind
there
of the
you
problem.
Go. That is the problem.
Yeah, they're all okay. So I probably would not be complaining no matter what. I think I could probably find a deck in Modern that is not 80 cards that will not go to time every round. And at that point, I'll probably be pretty happy. Because I think Modern's probably not necessarily a better format, but one that I would enjoy more.
Sure, I could see that. Standard, I think, has homogenized towards just piles of good cards at this point.
Yeah.
Which is, honestly, versus the standards we've played in the past, I'll take it. Like, I will take a mid-range format for a little while, but I'm ready for a change. I think this format feels very similar to the last format. Not a lot of change with Streets of New Capenna, just some upgrades to the already existing archetypes that didn't really change the way they played at all. Just a little bit more value throughout various spots on their curve. And that's not really what you're looking for when it comes to a new set. So
no, I'm kind of shocked that happened throughout Standard in general, where it was like, okay, here's, like some more Gruul cards or some more Is It cards. And there wasn't a whole lot of stuff that like spawned new archetypes,
Yep. And I agree with you.
Kind of disappointed by that, especially.
Not after Kamigawa anyway. Like Kamigawa was the one where it just kind of revolutionized everything. But after that, going to Streets, nothing really changed at that point.
Did Kamigawa actually change that much? It was like, oh,
no, I think so.
It was like, oh, you can do all these cool things, but then everyone just went back to like Esper, Goldspan, Dragon Chariot, and Is It?
Some of that, yeah, but like Wandering Emperor was a big game changer. Like the Esper stuff is very much built on all those Kamigawa cards, be it Kaido, Wandering Emperor.
It was a deck before that was doing very well.
It was, but it wasn't good. Like people were talking themselves into it, and I think it really needed those cards. The other one I will point out, which is clearly just born of Kamigawa, is the Enchantment Deck. I think that only existed at that moment.
Yeah, okay.
Champion deck.
That is true. I think that deck kind of stinks. So
it is having a resurgence recently.
I know.
And
I know.
I'm surprised by that. I agree with you. It seemed to be degrading very quickly, but yeah, doing well right now. And I don't know if we're going to take a look at Standard anytime soon because it's a little boring. But who knows? If they give us the right incentives to pay attention to Standard, maybe we'll do that.
I've been playing a little bit. But it was mostly just like, oh, I saw this kind of like cute thing and I wanted to try it. And that was it.
Was the cute thing good?
The thing that I did was really good, yeah.
Okay. I mean, you have to tell us about it.
Oh, I don't know. It was just Esper, but like I fixed it. So like Esper, the way people are building it, it's just like, oh, I play 4 Vanishing Verse because it's the best removal spell. And it's just like, it doesn't kill anything that matters. It's like, what are you doing? I don't know. I changed some stuff up. I quickly realized like what the best cards were. And I was like playing 4 of them instead of, 3 of this and 1 of this and 1 of this or whatever. So I don't know, man. Just like play Soul Shatter because it kills Dragon and like Rafine in the mirror match, or just, kills Planeswalkers a lot of the time. and people are just like, just play Vanishing Verse, even though it doesn't do anything. It's like, obviously it's good against like Chariot or Mono White, but it's not a great exchange against Dragon, and a lot of the time they just blow you out anyway. So
Yep.
it's just stuff like that, man. Where I do think that you have a lot of room to make little changes and have it actually be impactful, especially for a deck like Esper.
Yep. That is what I saw, by the way, when I was more closely managing the standard format. Unfortunately, I've gotten busy with other things, but when I was doing our tier list, people who were making small adjustments, conscientious of the metagame, yeah, they were doing a great job, and it was all about like, oh, I'm splashing this color this week, or this is the week where I need this many disdainful strokes, or I'm playing this removal spell instead. That was really the key to the format. And when I say like it's good that standard is doing the mid-rangey thing, from a macro perspective, when you look at it, it's kind of dull and all mushes together to a faceless soup. But from a micro perspective, when you're in it and you're trying to get an edge, I think it's a really player-friendly format.
Yeah, I mean the cards are there to give you edges, at least now in like 8-set standard. Like you have so many different playable removal options and threat options, and your mana bases at this point should be almost absolutely perfect, unless you're trying to curve like 1 to 4.
Yep.
Then maybe you have some problems. But mana's fantastic. All the cards are super, super good. Copious amounts of like 2-for-1s. So you just rarely run out of gas. You get to use basically your mana on every single turn. It's like those sort of things I do like, but then it's just like it's just the same 3 or 4 decks, which is not great. But
well, rotation soon. 1 set more.
I know.
We'll be rotating. I can't wait for it.
We need the new set to make new archetypes though, and
we do.
We do. Usually expect that to be the case because the first set after rotation kind of has to be a banger.
Yeah,
to have an impact. So they've been pretty good about that, and that's what I want. Just a little bit of change. In the meantime, I'll probably cast some Rafines for the next couple days or whatever, and then get bored of it.
I wish you the best of times. I'm going to go watch some Flesh and Blood all weekend and commentate, and I expect you to watch, even if you don't know what's going on. I expect everyone to watch.
Dude, I watched the Calling that you did commentary for. I watched a lot of it.
Good. I'm glad. Did you have a good time?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you anyway. And I expect you to come back and have an even worse time for this Pro Tour.
So,
because I know you have my back like that.
You and the commentary team you had for that were enjoyable to listen to, but I just had no idea what was going on. And at some point I should like maybe figure out the rules of the game.
I think if you just knew the basic rules, we could carry you to an understanding of it. Because we try to be conscientious of that. So
yeah, it's a new game.
I had a lot of people say to me like, "Oh, I just picked up these rules. I watched Pro's video and watched you guys do coverage, and it was great. I was able to pick up and understand, and you did such a good job walking me through it, which is so nice to hear because it really is the goal of what we're trying. Like we want it to appeal to both those sets of audiences. Really hard to do that, by the way. Like it's just a problem TCGs have always had. But we're trying. We're doing our best to make it appeal to both the enfranchised and the new viewers, and hopefully we hit it out of the park this weekend.
I think stuff like, maybe these are bad analogies, but like League of Legends or like chess, where it's like, okay, you kind of get what's going on, like you kind of understand the very basics of the rules, so it's sort of easy to sit down and watch if you're interested in that sort of thing. But in order to really understand the nuance or whatever, it's like leave that up to the commentators. They can provide as much or as little as they want to, but it's like you're able to watch and kind of know what's going on without having this expert level understanding of it. And we need a card game like that, honestly.
Look, I'm a full stan at this point, but I honestly think Flesh and Blood takes a lot of steps towards making that happen. You play with very similar setups face up on the board in all games. Everything is about, I won't say everything. There's like one major exception in the meta right now, but almost everything is about just this back and forth combat on every single turn. And, that sounds kind of like drab, but there's so many wrinkles to it and so much nuance to it that if I said chess is all about moving your pieces around the board. Okay, that's boring. But like, obviously there's so much more to it than that.
Right.
And Flesh and Blood feels the exact same way. I think if you get to that, and that's why it follows so well to the people who are like, oh, I just picked up this base knowledge. Because when you understand like what is happening here, what is the essence of Flesh and Blood, what is the combat that's being, how are these cards interacting with each other, then turns play out in a way where it's like, oh, well, this attack is happening. Here's the block that's happening. That's almost always what the turn is about. And then it's got tons and tons of nuance layered on top of it. So,
yeah. I mean, in theory, Magic is kind of easy, right? It's just like your lands, tap for mana, you cast some creatures, you attack with them or whatever, but it's just like all the cards have a ton of text, and,
right.
Fab does too, right?
It does. And
not as much, but.
Well, there's this weird moment with Fab, and there's some of this in Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's way worse in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you just like learn the shorthand reading technique, where you're just able to parse everything at like a moment's notice, and it's even faster than Magic because so many repeat instances of text show up where you just go, oh, this card is one of those. And then it happens 7 more times in the Heroes kit. And you just expect it after a while. And they're really good about playing to those expectations and making sure cards function how they need to. So you reach that baseline level of comprehension. It's a game that blossoms very quickly. I'm not saying there's not a huge investment to hit that point.
Yeah.
But once you hit that point, it opens up very quickly.
All right. I know for a fact that I'm going to tune in at some point over the weekend. Okay. And
at least to see my suits, because my suits are fresh as fuck for this event.
I told you to post some Twitter pictures,
Nah, I'm saving them till people tune in.
All right. Whatever. That's fine.
Got to give them a reason.
But it's like the highlight. It's the hype moment, right? It's how you get them to then click on the coverage.
This is it. This is that moment where I'm saying,
no, because you show them the thing and then they go to coverage from that.
I don't know.
You're like, click this for a surprise, but it's like, it's more likely if you give them kind of like the surprise up front and then they go watch the thing. 100%. 100%.
I think they would have to be more ridiculous suits than they are. Like they would have to go a little bit harder in the paint to achieve that.
It doesn't have to be outrageous. I also think that your definition of outrageous is probably higher or different than other folks. So whatever.
Maybe that might be true.
Anyway, what channel is this on?
Twitch.tv/channel Fireball.
Okay. That's what I thought, but just wanted to make sure. So
starting Friday morning, bright and early. I think we go live at 9 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay. Real quick. Just, like one word answers, basically like, what player do you think is going to win? And what deck do you think is going to win?
Bravo, star of the show, is going to win. As far as player, it's tough. It's tough. I think someone we've never heard of before. And I think it's going to be like someone from a region that just doesn't have the spotlight on it the same way some of the other regions do.
Okay. No, that's cool. That would make for a good story. I'm down with that.
Yep. That's what I'm hoping for.
Game.
Good luck.